All right, welcome back. So we're picking up with the questions after the Bras case. We'll run through these. I would recommend trying to think about these questions on your own before listening to this short segment. It might be most helpful to do that, and then feel free to listen back in. So first question, what if Price Cellular could have invested enough money in CIS to buy the license, right? What would have been the result in that case? I would say that there's probably not much of a difference there, and the result would not really be any different than we saw in the case itself. Why? Because the directors effectively turned down the opportunity, right? This puts at least two of the factors against liability, right? So even if Price Cellular could have invested enough money in CIS to buy the license, I don't know that that would necessarily change because, again, the directors basically said, we are not interested, right? We are not interested. However, it is important to remember that Bras is the sole owner of RFBC, of RFB Cellular. So I would say that the more conservative approach would have been for Bras to essentially refrain from bidding on the Michigan 2 license and essentially give the license to CIS if CIS was even remotely interested, right? But not to take it for himself. Not to take it for himself. He didn't do that, right? He didn't do that. He took it for himself. He sort of gambled and won. But the more safe approach, right? The safer approach would have been to essentially back off, not take the opportunity for himself, especially if Price Cellular could have invested enough money in CIS to buy the license, right? That's how I think I would handle the first question. Second, what if RFBC had other shareholders and CIS was interested in the Michigan 2 license? What should Bras do there? So I think first we should ask about kind of why are the authors adding that caveat of suppose RFB Cellular had other shareholders. And the reason why they're adding that caveat is because now we have a different situation, right? Now we have a situation where RFBC has other shareholders besides Bras who Bras has to worry about, right? Bras owes a fiduciary duty to the corporation and the corporation shareholders. If he's the only owner of the corporation, it's only him, right? But if we've got other shareholders of RFBC, then Bras has to worry about them and doing his duty to them. And so now we have a true conflict of duty, right? Because he owes not just a conflict of interest where we're worried about self-interest, but a conflict of duty where he's concerned and should be concerned about shareholders of RFB Cellular, right? Because we're positing now that there are other shareholders. And he has to worry about shareholders of CIS because, as we know, he's on the board of CIS, right? So now Bras has to worry about the RFBC shareholders. He owes them a fiduciary duty and the shareholders of CIS. This is very hard, right? This is very hard. He now has a situation of dual loyalties. So the authors ask, what should Bras do in that case? Again, he's in a difficult situation. The safest approach for Bras is to essentially remove himself from the decision. Remove himself from the decision. Make full disclosure to both boards of directors about what's going on here, right? Be completely transparent, explain the situation, and then recuse himself from any decisions. Back off, go home, stay away from the meetings, right? Make full disclosure, full transparency about what's going on to both boards, and then recuse yourself from the decision. Third question, suppose Bras was an officer at CIS in addition to being on the board. Would that matter? Right? Would that matter? I think the short answer there is no, right? He still owes a fiduciary duty in both cases. And so the fact that he's an officer of CIS in addition to being on the board does not really change the calculus in terms of fiduciary duties here. Suppose Rhodes, in bringing the opportunity to Bras, did not distinguish between Bras's role in CIS and his role of RFBC. Would that make a difference? Again, I don't think so, right? There's not really a change there. The conflict is still the same, right? Just because Rhodes comes to him in one capacity as opposed to another, that doesn't change the capacity in which Braz finds himself, right? And he's got to address that conflict. Fourth question: why did Price Cellular not simply outbid Braz and buy the Michigan 2 license? We don't know the answer to that, right? I imagine that the bidding got too expensive, right? The bidding got too rich, and at one point, Price Cellular just backs off and says, we're not going to spend that much money on it, right? And they walk away, and so that's why Price Cellular did not simply outbid Braz. Fifth question: was the court fair in treating CIS's interest in Michigan 2 as separate from Price Cellular's interest? Again, we talked about how this merger came 9 days later. I said the real party in interest was Price Cellular. So the authors are now asking if the court was fair in treating CIS's interest in Michigan 2 as separate from Price Cellular. I wonder about that too, right? I wonder about that also, right? Was the merger really that speculative at the time when in fact it came off 9 days later? If it was not so speculative, right, then the court would have realized that Price Cellular was in fact the real party in interest. So, right, again, hard to say if the court was fair. I did wonder about that, right? And we can ask ourselves how speculative the merger really was. Last question, sixth question. The court suggests that requiring Braz to take the opportunity to the full board would have been too costly, right? Do you agree? Do you agree? I think the way to think about this is that it's a much, as we said earlier, it's a much better practice to take the opportunity to the full board, right? That's going to be practically a safe harbor. If you take any opportunity to the board of directors and they say we're going to take a pass, right, then that gives you, the director, carte blanche to take advantage of the corporate opportunity, right? So the advice would be go to the full board, right? Be transparent with them. And by the way, do it in writing, right? So make sure that you don't just do this at an oral meeting, or if you do it at a board meeting, make sure that there are clear board minutes in writing which reflect what you did. All right, that wraps up the Braz case. I'm going to end this segment here, even though we're only at about 7.5 minutes. When we pick up with the next segment, we'll handle the eBay case.